Hello, welcome to episode 152 of the Casual Try Hard podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm James.
And today is Commons Only. We are talking about Pauper.
We are. We got a special guest we're going to introduce you to in a minute, and we're going to talk all about Pauper.
Yeah, so if you want to tweet at us your favorite commons, you can get at us at CasualTryPod on Twitter.
Oh, that's a really good idea. I really want to know what people's favorite commons are. You can also hit us up on Facebook at CasualTryHardMTG. I really want to see these. You guys should send them in. You can also email them to us, show@CasualTryHardMTG.com. If you're looking to pick up any commons or complete decks, because you can build a deck for like $30, please use our TCG Player affiliate link, tcg.casualtryhardmtg.com. Anything you purchase after following that link, we'll get a small percentage of to help keep the show going. And if you want to support us a little bit more directly, you can do so at patreon.com/casualtryhardmtg. Throw a couple bucks in the pot, you'll get access to our show notes. You'll get access to our pre-show that I've heard very good things about. It's a good pre-show. You guys should chip a couple bucks in and listen. And you'll also get on my mailing list for givebacks, which I have the next round organized but not sent out yet. So they'll be going out soon. Also, don't forget about our Discord. There's a link in the description. There's a link on all our social media. Hop on our Discord and have a chat with us. That's where we met our guest today.
Yeah, we make connections.
Yeah. So we have Brad from the Common Knowledge Podcast. Brad, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your show, kind of what you're into?
First of all, thanks for having me on, Brian and James. This is great. I knew I'd wear you guys down eventually if I just kept messaging you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
No, it should be fun. But yeah, I'm a co-host of the Common Knowledge Podcast, and pretty much, kind of like you guys asked me in the pre-show, 99% of what I do in Magic the Gathering is Pauper related, whether it's content or building decks, playing games, going to the LGS, what have you. But yeah, that's really about it. I've been playing Magic on and off. I mean, it's everybody's tale, but playing Magic on and off since 93, 94. Took some extended breaks in between. I've been back since about 2017, 2018, and it's been Pauper ever since.
Awesome. If people wanted to check your podcast out, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's on all the major podcast outlets. It's the Common Knowledge Podcast. Pretty straightforward. It's also CK Podcast MTG on Twitter. That's not super active, but you're probably more likely to find me on Twitter, and that's just Pauper_B.
There we go. So we wanted to bring you on, and you wanted to come on, because there's been a few times that I have mentioned, people should play Pauper. Yeah. Because, regular constructed Magic in air quotes is kidney priced at this point.
Yeah. I mean, not just that though.
Not just that.
We've met. I mean, not just that because Pauper is more than just that, but also because it's kind of been a recurring theme for the last few months that we're trying to find our place in what either Magic is becoming or has become, and something like Pauper might have a place in whatever you're trying to do with the game. So it's worth exploring. And like you had mentioned, maybe something you were talking about trying to connect with our good friend and longtime listener, Anthony, and, a way to do that through Spell Table or whatever that's, doesn't require a whole lot of investment could be Pauper.
Yeah, it's wonderful for that. Just some of the people I interact with on Twitter that I've gotten to be good buddies with. We've sent decks back and forth to each other. If there's somebody that needs, or first time into Pauper and they tweet it out, they're like, "Oh, what should I build for my first deck?" Before you know it, people are just sending them cards left and right, and they got 3 decks because it probably cost more to ship it than it did, the cards themselves. But now we have a new member in the community, so it all kinds of works out. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned new member in the community. Is there a big where do Pauper players hang out? Is there a central meeting area where a chat room on Moto or a Discord or a place where you could go if you were interested in the format to get some more information?
I think Twitter is probably the biggest.
Okay.
Because it's more generic, not generic. It's not specified. There's a ton of Facebook groups. There's a handful of Discord groups that you can get into, but a lot of those are very specific. Like there's 3 or 4 Discord servers that I can think of off the top of my head that are dedicated to pretty much one deck.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the same for other formats like modern or standard or what have you, but
Yeah.
I think Twitter is probably the best because even on Facebook, you kind of have to be like a member of this podcast to talk to the community or what have
gotcha.
you. So yeah, that's how I got on board. I was actually a member of the Common Knowledge Facebook group, and then got tired of Facebook, migrated over to Twitter, and here I am.
Awesome.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's talk about what Pauper is. Like,
Sure.
obviously, it's an inexpensive format that's easy to get into. That
You can say cheap. It's okay to say cheap.
Well, I mean, that takes a little bit away from it. It's inexpensive. I mean, some of the cards aren't cheap though. Like, I mean, Pauper definitely drives the prices of some cards. There's, I can think of like 3 or 4 cards off the top of my head that are, Pauper staples that kind of demand a premium just because they're played in Pauper.
Yeah.
So, like, that doesn't necessarily mean the format's cheap, but less expensive.
Right.
You might build a Pauper deck for $30 or $40, whereas, your modern deck's going to cost you $1,200.
Right. Yep. I can. I was sitting around last night on the couch and I kind of tallied it up. I have 2, what I call battle boxes, just full of decks. I have like almost 50 Pauper decks. I have 6 or 7 Pauper Commander decks, Pauper Cube, and everything combined with the deck boxes and the sleeves is like one tier 1 modern deck.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah,
crazy to think of like that.
So what makes a card Pauper legal? Let's start at like the very base level here.
Basically any card that's ever been printed at common, not silver border.
Okay.
If it's been printed digitally, like on MTGO, for example, like an MTGO exclusive, digital only version on MTGO promo, and it happens to be common, it's automatically legal in paper.
Okay.
Before it was not like that. Before they unified, MTGO had its own legalities, I guess you'll call it, and then depending on which LGS you went to, the paper events had their own legalities as well.
Oh,
and
weird.
then eventually, it gained enough steam, enough popularity that they became unified, and that added, I want to say it added to about 400 cards to the MTGO card pool that were in paper. They weren't
cool.
there before. So now pretty much it's all one big system now. If it gets printed in paper at common or printed online at common, it's all Pauper now.
Okay, so it doesn't matter, like, if it's common in like a random EDH precon that like downshifts it, like
Yep.
that still counts.
Yep, absolutely. We are very much like Legacy in that respect.
Okay, what about, like, are there any cards from Arena that change the legality? Like, I don't even know if, like, anything from like the remastered sets or anything change legalities or not, but like, would that change a card's legality?
I believe so. If it was a legitimate set on Arena, not like a card that gets conjured or a spellbook card or what have you.
No, yeah, don't get us started.
Yeah, I know. I tried to tread lightly.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's a legit set on Arena, if it happens to be downshifted, then yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
It would be Pauper legal. Thankfully, though, we haven't had a lot of that or any of that, really. What I've noticed is more so like Pauper staples get upshifted on Arena, like Lightning Bolt and, Faithful Suiting and all that stuff.
Yeah. So nothing out of like the, 600 card massive historic jumpstart like made any waves in Pauper or anything?
No, they all pretty much retain their legality, I guess you'll call it.
Well, cool. Well, that makes it kind of easy then.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's nice is like Scryfall, you can actually search like, is this Pauper legal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, you can just type in format, :Pauper, and there's every single card. I think we're up to almost 8,000 unique cards in the format.
Awesome.
Yeah, so if you don't know, Scryfall has you. Gatherer does not.
Yes, 100%.
Thanks,
really?
Wizards.
Gatherer doesn't support Pauper?
I don't think it
I mean, it's
might.
Wizards format. That's crazy.
Like,
Gatherer does. It's just not as
Well,
reliable.
that's not as nice to use.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I was going to say that'd be kind of weird if it wasn't on Gatherer.
Well, sometimes they ignore the format, so it's almost like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, Wizards they have a habit of doing that.
Yeah.
But like this started as a MTGO format, right? It was just played on Magic Online.
Yeah, it did. And I'm totally spacing on the names, but it was a handful, a nice tight group of people that played on MTGO. They would do like friendly leagues in the tournament practice room, basically player run events, which are still kind of a backbone to our community now. But yeah, and then it just kept steamrolling, kept gaining popularity until Wizards finally relented, probably, and gave us a format.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually played Pauper for a very short period of time. I know you're a newer listener, but that you've gone back and listened to some of our older stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I hurt my back pretty bad. I don't know, like 11, 12 years ago at this point, and I was out of work for a while. And one of the things that I did to pass time was I signed up for a Magic Online account way back then and was jamming some Pauper leagues.
Yeah, that's about the time it started getting real popular.
Yep. I remember going on to I think it was eBay. You could buy like common play sets from a whole set for like $10. So I bought a couple of those, and
I still do that to this day.
That's still a thing they do. I didn't even know that was.
Buy some sellers just sell like a single copy of the entire set in common. Some of them will sell like a whole play set.
Yeah.
Or some will sell like commons and uncommons play set from the whole set. But yeah, it's still a thing.
Yeah.
So what are, other than we've touched on the cost, what are the other like advantages of playing in Pauper?
That one, I think, is one of those tricky questions that tends to vary. The answer varies depending on who you ask. I think Pauper as a format is very approachable. It's a very powerful format, but it's also a very easy format to learn and to play. Obviously, because of what we talked about before, it's a very easy format to pick up. It can be as simple as this is a what commons do I own format, or it could be all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you're grinding and trying to take down challenges every weekend and, legitimately trying to make an income off of MTGO. So it's kind of everywhere in between. I'm probably closer to the kitchen table side of it, but really, I think I lost track of the original question, but no.
Well, just like, what benefits are there to playing in Pauper? Like, obviously, the cost is a big benefit, but like, what drives you to the format? Why do you play Pauper?
Yep. The first is the cost, obviously. You already said that. Two, I don't know if I can personally pin down an aspect of the cards or of the game itself that drives me or draws me to Pauper.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But it's definitely, since I've been around and been in Magic for so long, I've played in a handful of formats. I tipped my toe in Legacy for a little while and tried Standard, I think in Cons Block, that sort of thing, and now I'm in Pauper. I never did play Modern too much. But the main thing I really love about Pauper is just the community, the interactiveness of the community, the willingness to let's get 10 people together and brew this deck community. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's kind of willing to help each other out, and it's a huge, and it may be this way in other formats, but it's a huge international community. That's where like Twitter comes in real big, because you got, us here in the States and the Brazilian Pauper players. They have a huge community. There's some of the best Pauper players in the world. Wow. Same with Italy. They have some phenomenal players out there. They always hold. I think the pandemic put a slow on it, but they have Paupergeddon, which is like a huge 200 to 300 person in paper just Pauper tournament.
Wow!
Every year, yeah, it's really cool.
I never even heard of such a thing.
Yeah, I hadn't either, and most people haven't. Until you actually get into the format, and talk to some people, and that's kind of the thing too. And I think a lot of the popularity with the international community is a lot to do with MTGO, with the ease of access
Mhm.
and the exchange rate. Honestly, it's just cheaper to play Pauper, say, if you live in Brazil than it is if you live here. Like, I can play a league, I can buy a Pauper deck and play a league for a total of like $15. But if I lived in Brazil, that would be like $75.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that's just Pauper. So you can kind of drag that
Yeah,
out
that's
to other
crazy.
formats. And yeah, it gets real expensive. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But no, overall, I think I just love the community.
Yeah.
For as
Good
cheesy as that is
community.
to say.
No, it's perfectly reasonable. That is like one of the things, not that like I'm super deep in a Pauper or anything,
Mhm.
but that is kind of one of the things that I had noticed about the format is the community seems a lot more like close knit than a lot of the other formats. You get a bunch of modern guys in the same room and eventually they'll start talking about how, my amulet deck is better than your burn deck or whatever, but like Pauper's not really like that. You're kind of more of a cohesive group then. And like that's where my question earlier was kind of in the same direction as was like it made sense because of the kind of people that play Pauper that there would be like one big meeting place instead of like separate little communities for each little deck or archetype.
And I see what you're saying now. Yeah, that makes sense. I would have to say, yeah, something like Twitter would be the best option for that.
Yeah.
There are, like I said, there's multiple Discords, but it's hard to keep up with all those at some time.
Yeah.
So generally, unless you're part of a specific group on Facebook, Twitter's generally your best option.
All right.
So, like, I think I've talked about it on the show before. I've really enjoyed on Arena the like artisan events.
Yeah.
And I've found that like modern Magic is very snowbally, especially at like the rare and mythic level. Right, where like if if the thing resolves and you don't immediately kill it or kill it like the next turn, you just die.
It's dead, yeah.
Yeah, and like Pauper doesn't have that or doesn't have that as much. Right? Like it feels like there's more of the like old timey gameplay.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a Ragavan analog. There's not a one mana 3/3 that like gives you card selection and flies. Right.
It's Richard Garfield magic.
Yeah, it's more like the small edges that we've talked about, as opposed to feeling like, at least like in standard recently, it feels like everything's like just go over the top and do the biggest thing possible. And like moderns like that as well. And it feels like Pauper, you're like, oh, I have to like attack and block, and like how much mana I spend matters. Because there's like only like 4 or 5, playable free spells in the format. They're not like, flash 3/2s that exile my opponent's creature. Right? Like you have more feel of like, this is the Magic I played when I was, in 1993, 94. Right? The cards are way better than they were back then. We're not playing Hill Giants. But like you saw that like, oh, like it like my decisions up to this point in the game matter. And it feels like
is. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it feels like in a lot of like constructed, more higher powered formats, it feels like there's oftentimes like, I resolve my card. None of the things we did before this point matter. And the only thing that matters after this is this card. And you're like, oh, I thought I was making good decisions, but they don't matter anymore. And Pauper feels like you still have that like, oh, I like played the right land on turn 1 that let me maximize all of my turns up to this point, and that's given me this teeny tiny little fractional edge. And hey, great, now I can leverage that little edge that I have.
Yep, 100%. That's a really good way to put it. I think the format is about incremental advantages as you as you play the game. Whereas you mentioned modern, and say that's a turn 4 format or turn 5 format. That's basically, you're just done. Like turn 4, turn 5, your deck does what it's supposed to do, and you move on to the next match. Pauper, outside of a handful of decks, really can't be classified like that. It is very much a just a grind fest. It's a slugfest. Like you said, you have to attack, you have to block, you have to hope that you're hitting your lands on time, that you're curving out if that's what your deck needs to do. You know, if
Man, is
if a single
Pauper the only format where mid range is viable now?
for the longest time it was. Affinity's kind of put a squash on that, but yes,
Man,
mid range is definitely one of the 3 or 4 pillars of the format for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I've gone and looked at the Pauper meta game, and Affinity is an unreasonable amount of the format.
Unreasonable is a very polite word for it.
I think it's like 20%, 25% of the format. It's absurd.
That's crazy because Pauper's like normally a pretty diverse format.
It really is, and it's only been the I mean, some would argue longer than this, but it's really only been the last few years, I guess, since Fire Design. That every single set had before Fire Design, it was Pauper was lucky to get 1 to 3 cards out of a standard set that were remotely playable, and now we're getting 6.
Man, sometimes that sounds exactly like Legacy.
Yeah, sometimes we're getting 2 or 3 cards that create entirely new decks.
Wow.
It's just crazy. So, yeah, Affinity's out of control, thanks to Blood Fountain and Deadly Dispute and all that kind of stuff. And the bridges from Modern Horizons 2, they've been kind of a nightmare if you're not playing Affinity.
Yeah.
But, yeah, usually it's a lot more diverse than that. It's just kind of in a rough spot right now.
You mean having 15 playable artifact lands is a problem? Or 16, right? Darksteel,
yeah.
Citadel, yeah. Yeah, I could have never imagined. We went years without printing any more of those, and then we're just like, nah, here you go.
Yeah,
YOLO.
Here's some 2-color ones.
Yeah, here's dual ones at that. Oh, yeah, but they come into play tapped, so it's okay. It's fine.
We don't want you to get your land shattered, so we're going to make him indestructible, too. It's fine. It's fine. Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
So,
yep, and that's pretty much how it's been.
So we've kind of touched on it. Like, what are the general archetypes that like show up in Pauper? What are if you go to your LGS and to play Pauper? Like, what would you expect to see? Or if on Moto, what would you expect to see in like a normal league or whatever?
In a normal league, I would say in an affinity-less world, blue-black fairies, not so much blue-black Delver, but blue-black fairies is probably nearly tier 0 in our format. It's one of the best, if not the best decks in the format. There's Boros Monarch, which is... James, there's your mid-range deck right there. That's probably the best
mid-range deck?
Yep, mid-range deck is probably the best mid-range deck in the format. It's about the only one that can keep up with blue-black fairies or blue-black Delver, whichever one is the flavor du jour. Tron's always a big player. Not so much lately, just because of the supplemental sets that have come out have kind of tamed that beast, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a handful of aggro, I guess. A lot of burn. Burn's another pillar, I would say, of the format. And then really outside of that, it's going to be a handful of aggro and then just a ton of brews, honestly.
Are there any, like you mentioned, just about every archetype except for one, and that is Brian's favorite archetype combo? Are there any combo decks?
We do have some combo decks. Lastly, and not missed at all, was Chatterstorm. That one got nerfed back in September. That was pretty ridiculous combo deck. Some people loved it. You either loved it or you hated it. One of the two.
I saw some YouTube videos. It looked pretty absurd.
Yeah, it was real absurd. Turn 2 with 40 power on board. That's not something a commons only format is built to handle.
Right.
Outside of that, we don't have a ton of combo deck. There are some outliers. We've got some really cool brewers in the format that'll make some YouTube videos and hey, I've been working on this deck for 6 months and it finally got me a League 5-0. Mm-hmm. Here's a video for it. And then all of a sudden 100 people are playing it for 2 weeks and then it goes away forever. There's nothing that really sticks around. There's, with first day of class, we got the Goblin combo deck that pops up every now and then. That one hasn't been nerfed or anything. And that one's fun. Just reoccur a bunch of goblins, make infinite mana, burn them out. But really, unless you're down in tier 3, tier 4, there's not suitable combo decks, I guess.
Okay.
I have a very nice red-black Pauper Reanimator deck that I'm sure is awful. But
I don't know. I don't know if Reanimator can ever be awful. I love that archetype.
yeah, Faithless Lootings and Exhumes, and you bring back, oh gosh, one of the big, like, BFZ Eldrazi, and it has some, again, this is what's great about Pauper is just random cards. There's the enchantment that, like, is Dragon something. Dragon's Breath, maybe? Yeah. Yep. And when a creature
your Crusher and...
Yep. Gives it haste and you attack. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, like, you know, if there's not in that format, Endurance.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. The pains of my existence.
Nothing like a turn 2 Ulamog's Crusher.
Yeah, that's right.
Is
good clean magic.
Fairy Macabre Pauper legal? Was that a common?
It is.
That's a sideboard staple in any color deck in our format.
Yeah.
Is it basically the only graveyard hate? Was it? I think like all the artifacts we've gotten lately were uncommons, right?
Lately, yeah, we have Relic of Progenitus, which is probably hands down the best artifact graveyard hate anyway. We have Tormod's Crypt, which is okay. But those are probably the two for artifacts that make the biggest problems, headaches for graveyards. And then we just have a random assortment of spells that will take care of 1 to 3 cards, you know. But if you're really worried about graveyard, you're running Fairy Macabre and or Relic of Progenitus.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing your thing and then getting it like Chain of Vapor or Echoing Truth or whatever. Sad times. Yeah. Sad times. I did oh no, I didn't do the thing. The thing got undone. No.
I did a thing. You weren't supposed to do your thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You were supposed to watch my thing happen.
That's what they say about fun though, right? It's a zero-sum game.
Yes, one person's having all of the fun.
You need to have all of the fun, and you need to have none of the fun.
Yeah, there's no split.
Yeah, my guy needed to be hexproof. My bad.
Hexproof Boggles. That's another nearly tier 1 deck. I would say tier 1.5. It's always there, always prevalent, and it's a nightmare.
You're supposed to be trying to talk me into Pauper. I guess you have some good answers though, because like the edicts are all common, right?
Yeah, Diabolic Edict, Chainer's Edict, get all the good stuff. Yeah. There's a ton of sacrifice, like Innocent Blood and all that good stuff.
Yes,
it's just a matter if you can get to them fast enough.
Yeah, that question I had about the graveyard hate kind of made me think about something else. Like, is sideboarding different in Pauper than it would be in like a regular constructed format because you don't have access to like all of the hate cards? Like, there's no ley line, right? So like personal hexproof really isn't a thing.
Right. That's correct. Yep. I think it's probably the same as far as what you need to hate out. You know, like my deck is weak against A, B, and C. That's what I'm going to hate out, and everything else I'm just going to cross my fingers. Yeah. We just don't have the power to put in our sideboard like other formats do. Other formats do. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it was just kind
pretty
of weird.
No, go ahead.
That was just kind of a weird observation that I was just thinking, you know, if you like what kinds of, I know that like the cards in general are, I don't want to say a lower power level, but like of a different caliber, which means like the hate would also like be a different caliber, but like some sorts of hate just don't exist. Like there is no Blood Moon, there is no Leyline of Sanctity, there's like there's no land destruction. Well, I guess there is, but
there is. You just have to run a very specific type of deck for it.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird deck building constraint to think about.
So,
yeah, it is. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say. So earlier you said that you have like 50 decks, but what are like your go-to decks? Like if you were like, okay, I get to play 3 more Pauper leagues. What are the 3 decks you're gonna go play before you have to hang it up forever?
Ooh, hang it up forever. Mono White Heroic, probably be the last one I play because I want to savor that one.
That's like a aggro deck.
Yeah, it's basically weaker Boggles, Laguna Band, Trailblazer, and a bunch of enchantments, and hope you get there, sort of thing. Mutagenic Growth and all that. It's just I love enchantments and I love mono white decks, so or else I would just play Boggles.
Does that play kind of like an Infect game plan, or is it
Yeah,
more closer to
kinda.
Boggles?
It's kind of in between. It's the play style with what you're trying to do is probably similar to Infect, but it's not
Yeah.
as fast. And
Okay.
then it's about the same speed as Boggles, but it's not as powerful. Like you won't ever have a 16/16 double life linker trample, in mono white
Yeah.
heroic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all about one drops and one drop creatures, one drop enchantments, and then hope you hit your land drops.
Okay.
So yeah, mono white heroic would be the last league I play. For the first league, I'd probably take this terrible brew that I've been working on for years. This is blue black Night Sky Mimic. Do you remember that card?
I have no idea what that
No
card
idea.
is.
Yeah, from Eventide, it's like if you cast a blue, black or white spell, it becomes a 4/4 flyer. Yada yada yada. It's really terrible. It's fun as hell, but it's really terrible. And then League 2, right in the middle, I probably would play a Boros. Probably a Boros like bully style deck where it's more tokens and not just harder control, mid range with the Monarch and all that stuff. I'd probably just play like the tokens go wide and battle Screech and rally the peasants.
Gotcha. So definitely sound like a kind of an aggro player then.
Yes, to my core, I am an aggro player. I know I understand the basics of control and I enjoy a good mid range, but I'd rather play a quantity of games than a quality of games, I guess. I like the sitting at the LGS in a tournament and my match is over in 10 minutes and I can just hang out for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, go watch another game or hang out with one of your buddies or something.
Exactly, yep.
So
cool. And that's just, when I play, that's just how my mind thinks too. Like land, creature, swing, that's that's it.
I understand the appeal.
Yeah.
So I have found Night Sky Mimic. It is 1 in a black-white hybrid for a 2/1 creature shapeshifter. Whenever you play a spell that's both white and black, Night Sky Mimic becomes a 4/4.
There you go.
It gains flying until end of turn.
Yep.
I mean, that's a pretty good rate. Like that into like, I don't know, any like hybrid card from any of the guild sets, and you're just doing it.
Yeah, you got to pair it with Edge of the Divinity, the enchantment, the white-black hybrid 1 mana enchantment that if the creature that you're enchanting is white, it gets +0/+3. If it's black, it gets +3/+0.
Oh.
So Night Sky Mimic is both, so you just end up with the 7/7 flyer on turn 3.
That definitely sounds powerful.
Yeah, I like that. But it's all the mimics, but specifically Night Sky Mimic is just one of those cards that when it gets on the board, everyone knows what you're doing, so it just becomes a target, and you're probably not going to win.
Yeah.
But it's hella fun.
Sounds it.
And that's what matters.
That's right.
Yep.
I mean, and
That
that's
is all that
also
matters.
like another thing, like, if you listened to the pre-show last week, folks, I talked about, I think it was last week, spent 2 hours talking about a cube. And
That was last week.
Yeah. And like, it's just fun to like find these cards that like time has forgotten.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, Night Sky Mimic, and we've both been playing on and off since
Forever.
Forever. And we were both like, what the heck is Night Sky Mimic?
Yeah, there was a whole cycle of the mimics, but that was probably the most playable in our format anyway.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like
I had never heard of that card before.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But it's super cool to be able to go find those cards that you're like, oh, I think this card's super neat. And like you feel like you found that card. You know what I mean? You're like, no one's playing this card. Like this is my thing.
Yep.
Right. Like everyone's playing Delver or, whatever thing gives you the Monarch.
Yeah.
Right. But like this guy, you're like, this is my thing. This is my card. Right. And like, there is still a best deck in the format, but the power level is a little flatter. So like you're able to play your brew and like have fun. And maybe you win 48% of your matches.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yep. As opposed to, I'm playing my fun brew in modern. 05. You're like, no. Can I get like a win? Like, no.
I'm definitely the Johnny when it comes to the psychographics or what have you.
Yeah. Is there like if you sit down and play a league, do you normally come across brews, or is it mainly just meta decks?
The leagues are actually pretty safe. You're not going to, I mean, you'll still find your handful of affinities and blue, blacks, and trons and all that stuff, but generally they're going to be tier 2-ish, maybe 1.5, or a brew that someone's been working on a couple weeks and they had some luck with it, so they're going to run it out there and see what they can get for it.
Yeah.
Leagues are generally more fun than challenges. Challenges are where you hit like the grinders and the professionals and people that play MTGO 40 hours a week,
All right. Well, like that's maybe a distinction we should talk about real quick, because I know like we haven't really covered a whole lot of Magic Online stuff on the show.
Right.
Mainly because like neither of us are really interested in Magic Online.
Right. I don't blame you.
What's the difference between a challenge and a league?
Basically, the friendly leagues, as they're kind of nicknamed, but it's the leagues. They go for as long as a season lasts, which pretty much a season lasts from one standard set release to another.
Mm-hmm.
And they just go constantly. And it's 10 tickets to enter, 10 ticks. Here in the States, it's about $1 per tick. So $10 to enter. And you can win I think you start profiting off the league if you finish with a 3-2 or better. You play 5 matches. And then whatever you end up with, you end up with. But you can play as many leagues as you want back to back, simultaneously. I think I haven't done that in a while, but yeah, you can hop from one league to the next, kind of like being at, say, a big weekend long festival, and there's just tables everywhere. You just sit down and play another league, And
so
some leagues
just like on demand.
Yeah, they're just on demand. Some leagues will have 150 people playing at a time, depending on the meta. I've seen as many as 300 or 400 at a time. So there's always games to be found. But yeah, leagues, you can just keep going back to back.
Okay. And then you said challenges, they're like more scheduled?
They are scheduled. There's a challenge every Saturday and every Sunday. The field is usually in the 60s or so, unless it's just a terrible meta. Then sometimes they've been known not to fire at all. But thankfully, we're not that bad right now. And it's more of a serious... The prize pool is a lot more increased.
Okay.
So you get a lot more grinders. This is where you can, if you're actually looking to profit any money on MTGO, this is probably what you're going to try to play. You can seriously increase your return on investment. And it's just, but because of that, that's where you're going to run into the more high-powered decks, better players, and that sort of thing. And they have been this year, and then a little bit last year, they run like showcase challenges and qualifier challenges to where you can win entry into some championship series on Arena and that sort of thing. So we've gotten a lot of multi-format players come to Pauper lately and play the challenges. So that's really cool to see too.
Yeah, that's cool. Kind of like a backdoor way for them to get in and also check out a new format.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. And were the challenges the same price to enter, or are they more?
They are more, but like I said, you get more of a return. So,
gotcha.
And pretty much the top 32 get something back, whether or not you profit or break even. Depends on where you place. But
and like that's really not that bad if you're talking about 60-man events either. Like it's not unreasonable to finish in the top 50%.
Yeah, it's really not. The only drawback to that is in metas like now, where Affinity is nigh unbeatable. That's kind of all you run into in the challenges. I think 2 weeks ago, the Sunday challenge, maybe the Saturday challenge, it was like of the top 32, there were 9 Affinity decks.
Wow.
And that's not something I really want to be part of.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is more expensive. Like you asked, it's 30 ticks to enter as opposed to 10, but your reward can be potentially a lot larger. Yeah, much greater.
Cool. So go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, if someone wanted to get into the format, other than putting out the bat signal on Twitter to get cards sent to you, what should they do? Like, I think we have it in the notes. Is like, how do you convince your friends to play Pauper? Like, but if Pauper sounds interesting, like, what are you trying to do? Like, how are you going to convince people? What deck should you get? Or maybe not like what deck's good, but like, what, I guess all the decks are accessible. So, like,
Like,
where would you steer
no,
someone?
like a lot of times people have asked me about how to get into Modern, and my suggestion is always to play Elves because it's super linear. It does the same thing every game. Once you learn the lines of your deck, you can kind of pay attention to the rest of the format and learn what makes the format tick. Like, is there an analog to that for Pauper where there's like a deck that's great for learning the format?
I would also say elves,
Oh,
and
okay.
I would add to that probably burn, just straight up burn. Yep, that's the one. Whenever there's a new player, either to the format or new to Magic in general, as a game itself, I usually introduce them to burn.
Hmm.
It's probably the easiest, at least in Pauper anyway. I haven't played burn in too many other formats, but it's really easy to pick up. I mean, you're just trying to do
Count to
20
20.
damage, yeah, as quick as you can, and there you go.
Yeah. Is the just kind of a excuse me, real quick aside, is Pauper Elves more like Legacy Elves where it's a combo deck, or is it more like a beatdown style?
It feels and looks like a combo deck to me because it's so fast, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
they go from like one creature to a board of creatures,
Okay.
but they still have to swing it. You know what I mean? They still have to swing in. They still have to trample over whatever you've got out there because it is Pauper. More than likely, that Elves player is facing down a board of some other creatures. It's 15 wide or what have
Yeah.
you. So it is a combat oriented deck, but it's very fast and it's very very weak to sweepers. I don't know about Legacy or what have you, but
Yeah, that's pretty much every version of Elves is weak to sweepers.
yeah, yeah. Because we recently had Fiery Cannonade downshifted in, I believe, Commander Legends this time last year, and that definitely made some waves in the format.
Yeah.
Stompy hasn't been the same since.
Yeah, cheap sweepers will do that.
Yeah,
And I know you said that you play, mostly online, but that you do, show up, or you used to show up to your like your local events at your game store. Like if you were trying to build a community, like to start a like a weekly Pauper or a monthly Pauper or something at your LGS, and you got any advice for somebody, trying to convince other people to play the format?
yeah. It's not easy. Thankfully, my LGS, the community was pretty semi-established already.
Yeah.
But just from being around other shops and talking to other players and stuff, it definitely takes. You have to be committed to wanting to play the format and wanting to teach people the format, and then you just have to have a lot of patience. You have to go up to the shop, whatever your LGS is, pretty regularly. Try to make it a scheduled thing to where even if Joe Blow doesn't play Pauper with you for 3 or 4 weeks, you get to be a regular in his mind. Eventually he will sit down with you, and have decks, have multiple decks, you don't have to build 48 of them, but if you have one of each archetype, 4 or 5 decks that play well together, that are kind of sideboarded against each other, you get 3 or 4 people playing, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you got a stew. You know what I mean? You got a tournament going on.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be kind of a big selling point of the format is, you can just have multiple decks for the format for like the same price as your mana base would be for just about any other format.
Yeah,
so like,
yeah, absolutely.
Lending decks out isn't as big a deal.
It's really not. I mean, even if sure, we've got some old cards that if you buy them in foil, they're $100 a piece or whatever. But even foiling out, making your deck all blingy isn't that backbreaking. And I haven't met anyone that has multiple decks that isn't willing to lend them out, because Pauper players want to play Pauper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's mainly the case for any format. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's the case for Legacy players, and
Yeah, sure.
We've talked about that on the show a bunch of times. How it really doesn't matter. Like a Legacy player just wants to shuffle up and play it. It really doesn't matter to them anything else. And yeah, I'm sure Pauper's the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's all I had on the show notes. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, or questions you had for us, or anything before we call it?
Not too much. I know I talked about it a little bit in the pre-show. There's a pretty passionate, I don't know how big they are, but there's a pretty passionate arena Pauper community. They play either standard Pauper or historic Pauper, and they run their own events as well through their Discord. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if that's something, you guys would ever get in on, since you're already sort of, invested in arena and you probably have all the cards.
Unfortunately,
tournament.
I am invested in Arena.
Yeah, I think they run it through MTG Melee. I haven't messed around with that site a whole lot, but yeah. And two, when I meant to bring this up, if you don't mind, when we were talking about the leagues and the challenges, another option too, if you're more like me or you're more like a brewer, or you'd rather spend those 10 or 30 ticks on new decks and cards or whatever, there are a lot of communities that run their own events, and many of them are free, like player run events.
Okay.
So those are always fun too, and those are good places to try out. If you're working on a brew and you don't want to burn a league worth of money on it because you don't know it'll do well. Well, here's a free event. Worst thing that can happen is you lose. The best thing that can happen is you win 5 ticks for free for doing nothing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So those are huge, and honestly, at this point, I think there's probably 2 or 3 player run events like that for Pauper every week. Usually on the weekends, maybe 1 or 2 during the week. So that's always an option for anyone that doesn't want to get super invested into MTGO, which I can't totally blame them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I was on MTGO, but I wasn't a huge fan. It felt like the interface was trying to make me lose.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Like if they could somehow, no, I don't want that. I was going to say if there's somehow they could port your MTGO collection into Arena, I would play Arena, but I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, it's a whole nother bag of worms.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's an idea for a whole nother show.
Right.
So how do you find these tournaments? Because, I can't imagine my brief clicking through Magic Online. I can't imagine it's easy to find these tournaments in the interface. So again, are we just sending out the bat signal to you on Twitter and being like, hey, where's this event at? Or
where do I go?
Yeah, exactly. How do people find that?
Most of it is done. I would say about half of it is done on Twitter. Someone will put up a tweet like, hey, so-and-so group or what have you is running this big event. It's free. Sign up here. They send you the link. Maybe sometimes you have to get in a Discord to make sure that you're on the up and up with the administrators or whatever. And then also, too, on MTG Melee, there's a couple other sites that'll let you host tournaments. But on MTG Melee, you can just search up a Pauper tournament. Look up Pauper tournaments, and there'll be a schedule, and you just click on the one you want to play in.
So, if I search, hashtag Pauper, is there, going to be a bunch of stuff that comes up? Or is that some weird quarter of Twitter I don't want to go to?
Oh.
Does it mean something
MTG
else?
Pauper?
Oh, MTG Pauper? Okay.
Yeah, and it'll fill your timeline for sure. There's a lot more Pauper players on Twitter than I had imagined. That's for sure. Because when I started, it was just me and my little. I'm listening to Common Knowledge, and I'm on the Facebook group, and then I go to Twitter to be like, I love Seeker of the Way. Look at me. But it's a whole world. It's every continent has Pauper players. There's a huge Japanese and Chinese community for Pauper. Like I said, Italians, Brazilians. We're all over the place.
So during our little intro, Brian had wanted to know what all of our listeners' favorite commons are. So now you're on the spot.
Mine is Seeker of the Way.
Seeker of the Way from Cons?
Hands down. From Cons, yep. First time I cracked it in a pack. I don't know. I love Prowess. I love Mono White. I love Incidental Life Gain, and this just has everything.
It does all of those things.
Yeah, it really does.
So what's funny.
What about you guys?
Oh, mine's easy. It's Faithless Looting.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
The tracks.
The best.
Yeah. Faithless Looting is a pretty good card.
Yes.
I'm a fan of Stitcher Supplier.
Oh, that's also a good one. We just want to put stuff in our graveyard. That's
I don't know if it has a place in Pauper or not, but that is one of my favorite cards.
That is a really good one.
So it's funny. You're talking.
It is not Pauper legal.
Is it an uncommon?
It is an uncommon.
Was it really?
Oh,
yep,
no.
From M19 or 2019.
Oh,
yeah, I knew it was a core set. I didn't think it was an uncommon. All right, I'll have to think of another one then.
So
I printed it again at uncommon on the list.
What about Coiling Oracle? Is that a common?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Coiling Oracle it is then.
I've been trying to make that card good for so long in Pauper, like that and Arboreal Grazer.
It's good all by itself.
Growth Spiral. It's just not happening.
So you'd mentioned Seeker of the Way, and so I had got on Twitter and I typed in MTG Pauper, and the second tweet, it just went away. The second tweet that came up was someone attacking with 3 Seekers of the Way.
I want to follow them right now.
Yes.
That's what I'm about.
It's Phil Gallagher from Thraben U. There you go.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, talking about like his Boggles opponent blocked, and he has some card that I can't even read what it does, but it must like make you sacrifice a blocking creature or something. Yeah. Oh, it's got destroy target enchantment in each other enchantment attached to it or something. So he's just gonna blow up his all of his enchantments on his poor little whatever it is, Glade Cover Scout.
I guess I didn't realize he was a Pauper aficionado.
It's just not just legacy decks anymore, man.
I guess
you got to branch out.
Javier Dominguez tweeting earlier about Pauper. He played in the challenge, I think, this weekend.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I think that's who it was anyway. I'm terrible with my pros names.
World champion.
Yeah.
And then a lot of those guys.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. You know who I find right under, just a few tweets under?
Who's that?
Some Pauper _B with a sweet, like, My Little Pony or Unicorn Crash Through or something?
Yeah, that's for my cube. That was my cube edition of the day.
Your cube edition of the day is this sweet
Crash
Through?
It was from one of the secret layers, one of the recent secret layers.
Yeah, Saturday morning cartoons.
Like yeah, that's what it was, the Saturday morning cartoons. I'm like, I need that for my cube. I'll probably end up taking it out for something else, but I need it now for some reason.
Right now, must have.
Pretty much.
Yes, I totally understand that.
And that's kind of my problem why I have so many dozens of decks, is I just have to have them. Like,
yeah,
I'm just collecting them at this point. I'm not really playing them. Like, what am I going to do? Haul around 87 pounds of decks to the LGS next time I go? I'll probably take 3 or 4, throw them in a bag, and go up there.
Yeah,
just
need a wheelie cart.
Yeah, I'd have to. I don't know.
Could turn you into one of those the people that play minis that like come in with like a literal rolling suitcase of like plastic and dice, and it's just like, all right, like you have a laser level, you're in too deep. This is too much like construction. Like, please,
too much.
please,
laser
stop.
level and a tape measure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got to like put up some cabinets. Like this is too intense for me.
I could talk to my shop though. They have a bank vault. What if I could just store everything in there?
Oh, whoa.
Oh, that's cool.
Your LGS has a bank vault. Was it a former bank?
Yes, it was one of the. I guess it still technically is, but it was one of the oldest banks in St. Louis. Has the old vault and everything still. It is amazing.
Well, that's super cool.
Yeah, they were going to. Before Corona, obviously, they were going to have like. When they had events, they were going to do the premiere match inside the vault and like stream it or broadcast it or whatever.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll have to share some pictures with you guys. I got them in a Discord somewhere. I'll have to find them. But yeah, it's really sweet.
Huh.
Battle in the bank. There or something.
Yep. Yeah, I've talked to him about putting together some sort of massive, like, because of the bank vault, some sort of big cosplay event for the Streets of New Capena.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. With like entry into the costume contest, get you a admission into the Pauper event on Saturday or something crazy.
That would be cool.
There you go.
Cops and robbers. Yeah, that's a little bit of a haul.
We're like halfway across the country.
Yeah, it's just halfway.
Yeah.
The problem with going out there is I'd have to make it a longer trip because my brother'd be pissed if I didn't see him too.
Yeah.
My brother lives he lives in Oklahoma. If I'm traveling that far from home,
might as well just
in that direction.
8 hours. Yep.
Yeah. See, the problem is that my brother is north-ish, I guess. He's in, or I guess northeast. He's in Indiana. So we just have to go and like split.
Yeah. We'll meet up for the event and then go our separate directions.
There you go. My brother lives in Savannah.
Oh.
I don't know how close that is to you guys, but
4 hours maybe?
4 hours?
Yeah.
Probably 4.
It's a lot closer than St. Louis.
It is.
Yeah.
Like I have driven to Savannah for like a weekend trip before.
Yeah. The last hurricane we had, we evacuated to Savannah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, so there we go.
Cool place down there.
Yeah, I like it. Real historical. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a conference there. Took a bunch of students. Lost 0 people. That's all that matters.
That's a win.
It's always rough taking students anywhere. Like, I took students to New Orleans, and they came back with hand grenades from Bourbon Street at like 2:00 in the afternoon. I was like, "What are you doing? Don't get me fired, please. I can't handle this."
Yeah, I hope
Bourbon Street at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Oh yeah. They were going hard.
That's awesome.
They were going hard. I was like, "Ah, God, no." So, all right.
Come back all sticky.
Yeah,
Oh, guaranteed.
Why is everything sticky?
sticky, and why do you all smell awful?
Yeah.
So, with all that, I think we have a Pauper show.
I think we have a Pauper show.
I think we do.
So, if again, your assignment is if you want to get at us on Twitter, you should tweet at us your favorite comment. I'm going to make sure that I tweet mine out, and then see James can reply and stick Coiling Oracle on the end there, and we can get a chain of everyone's favorite comment.
I love
going.
it.
That's a great idea. Make it happen.
The engagement.
We will make it happen.
There we go.
Yep. You can also find us on Facebook at CasualTryHardMTG, or as always, you can drop us an email, show@CasualTryHardMTG.com. But if you tell us your favorite comments that way, the world won't get to see them. So hop over to Twitter, Casual Tripod, and do it that way. If you're looking to... What's that?
You got to publicize it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it didn't happen unless the world saw it, right?
That's right.
If any of you guys are looking to build any Pauper decks or just kind of fill out your collection, please don't forget to use our TCG Player affiliate link, tcg.casualtryhardmtg.com. Anything you purchase after using that link, doesn't matter what you do, we'll get a small percentage of to help keep the show going. And if you want to support us more directly, please hit us up on patreon.com/casualtryhardmtg. Throw us a couple bucks. I'll put you on my mailing list. You get access to our show notes. You get to listen to more of us during the pre-show, which, I mean, I feel like the pre-show is equally as good as the show. So you guys that aren't on Patreon are missing out. And we have our Discord. There's a link in the description. There's a link on all our social media. Brad, you want to shout out your socials again?
Yeah. You can find me specifically at Pauper_B on Twitter. My other podcast, or my main podcast, is CK Podcast MTG on Twitter, or just the Common Knowledge Podcast on any of your listening outlets.
Awesome. Yeah, I checked out a couple episodes. Really good.
And I'm going to be a professional podcast person, and I'll put links to this stuff in the description.
Oh, what?
Yeah, there we go.
That is Chad approved.
Bro, that's how you get the beans. Links.
That's what it's all about. Beans equals links.
Yeah, that's right. And digital only cards. Oh, too soon.
Yeah. Next week.
So with that, we will catch you on the internets.
We'll catch you on the internets. Oh, you're letting me down, Brad. We got to catch you on the internets too.
Oh, we'll catch you on the internets.